Full Stack Basics presents Master JavaScript. Unlock the power behind the frameworks.
In our last episode, we created the DevTruths app with vanilla JavaScript. And in this episode, we are going to create the same thing, but with React. And after this episode, you're going to have a good sense of what's under React's hood. But not before we discuss controversial truth number 2.
React is just JavaScript with an assistant. If you don't know what the assistant is doing, you're still on your own.
And rebuilding the DevTruths app will prove so. So let's get started with React, and before we continue on, I just want to remind you that you need to have Node.js installed in your computer. The best way to know how to create a React project is to learn it from the source. So for this, we're going to go to react.dev and we're going to learn quickly what's the fastest way to get started with React. So I'm going to click here on Learn React, then go ahead and click on Installation and click on Build a React app from scratch. As you can see here, a step that we can follow is to use Vite. Vite is a module bundler, and this is a really cool way to start with a boilerplate React template that will help us get our projects going faster. Now that we know what to do, I'm going to head back to the code and I'm going to open my terminal. Regardless of your operating system, you should have access to a terminal. So what you're going to do now is that you're going to change directories into the folder where we are keeping our projects. In my case, it's going to be desktop DevTruths-projects. So if I hit enter, it's going to change me to that directory. If I do ls to list, you'll see that I have the folder that we created in the previous episode called DevTruths Vanilla.js. So in this folder, we're going to execute the following command, which I'm going to simply copy from the React website, like so. I'm going to paste it in my terminal, and we are simply going to create this new app in the same folder where we have our other DevTruths folder, right? And the only thing I'm going to do here is change the name of the app, DevTruths-React. And as you can see, there's still a space here. Once you have this command in your terminal, you can hit enter. And as you can see, it gave you a boilerplate React template for your React project. Now, what we can do is list what we have in that folder again. And as you can see, you have now 2 folders. The one that we created in the previous episode and the one that Vite created for us. Now, we are going to open this one with our VS Code. So I'm going to go here to Open Folder and simply open the folder created for us by Vite. I'm going to say, yes, I trust the authors. And we have to do one thing here. We have to go to the terminal, which we can open inside of VS Code, and we have to do npm install. Why? Because Vite gives us the template for React, but it doesn't give us the dependencies that Vite needs to run the sample application in this template. Once you install all the dependencies, you're going to see the node modules folder here, and then you can say npm run dev, which, as you can see here in package.json, is the script that Vite gives you to run the application. Once you run this, you're going to notice that most likely you're going to be running on localhost 5173. If I open this with the browser, you're going to get this template that Vite gives you, which also has a counter of how many times you click on this button. Perfect. Let's head back to the code and do some cleanup so then we can create the DevTruths app with React.
This premium content is brought to you by Full Stack Basics JavaScript Bundle. Create a full stack Kanban board prototype with Vanilla.js and the Gem stack, including registration, login, and drag and drop functionality without libraries. Next, create a production-ready Kanban board with the Mern stack, including Google single sign-on and drag and drop. Learn more at fullstackbasics.io/projects.
So let's do a little cleanup here and let's set up our styling first. So I want you to come here to index.css and simply delete everything in here. You don't need to do anything else, just simply do that. Then I'm going to go to app.css and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to delete absolutely everything we have in there and we are going to replace it with our own styling. Once again, we're working on app.css. So please pause and implement each selector with the styling. So start with the body, then with the H1. Since we're building the same thing, we need the card container and the card styling. So I'm just going to scroll up here so you can see better. So far you have implemented the body, H1, card container, and the card. Now I'm going to scroll up a little more and I'm going to include the card hover, the title, and the reason right in here. Pause and implement. Now that you have all of this implemented in your app.css, then we're going to close out of here. We're going to come to app.jsx. And what we're going to do is get rid of the logos. We're not going to use them. We're going to get rid of the counter for now. We'll get back to that soon enough. And I'm going to get rid of all this JSX, which as you can see is simply HTML inside of JavaScript code. So your app.jsx should look as plain as mine. So please pause and get this going. Perfect. So now that we have this here, we're going to start with the data, which is the 5 truths that we're displaying. So here in the source folder, go ahead and create a new folder that I'm going to call data. And inside of this folder, create a file called data.js. And what I want you to do here is simply include the same DevTruths list that we had in the vanilla.js, which I'm going to include right here in this data.js. Now, one thing that you're going to get from frameworks is that frameworks give you modularity. And this allows us to have the data in a different file. But in order for us to have access to it, where we're going to render each individual card, we have to export it. So then we can import it back where we're going to display it. So pause and make sure that you're here. Now that you have this done, I'm going to create another folder here in the source folder that I'm going to call components. And like I said, React and frameworks in general do give you modularity. So inside of this components folder, create a new file called card.jsx. Please pause and do this. Now that you have this, I want to remind you of something that you should have done at the beginning. If you haven't done so yet, please go ahead and install this extension, ES7 React Redux React Native Snippets. Why? Well, because this is going to allow us to create a boilerplate React component without having to type a whole lot. So I'm going to do RAFCE, and this creates a React arrow function component. And when I click enter, it just creates this for me. So I'll go ahead and do the same. Now, this card component is going to take two properties, which in React are known as props. We need the title and we need the reason so that we can actually display it in the card. So right here in this set of parentheses, include a set of curly braces and then include title and reason. Pause and implement. Next, we are going to create a div in here, and I'm going to create it from scratch. It's going to be a div with the class of card, like so. Please pause and do the same. And then we are going to include a div for the title and for the reason. And as you can see, we are dynamically displaying each title and each reason per card. So please pause and make sure that your card component looks like mine. With this, we can head back to our app.jsx, and we're going to have a little bit of fun here because the first thing we're going to do is import our DevTruths from our data folder, which contains our data.js file. And then, of course, we want to import the card component that we just created like so. So please pause, make sure that you have your imports. Next, in the return statement, I'm going to get rid of this fragment here, and we're going to work within the set of brackets that we have here in the return function. And what I'm going to do is create another div with the class of app, like so. Please go ahead and do the same. Then I'm going to create an H1 that reads DevTruths React version. So please pause and do the same. Under here, I'm going to create another div with the class of card container. Please pause and implement this. Now that we have the card container, we're going to do something really cool that we can do in React. See, this here is called JSX. JSX allows us to include HTML elements, but when we include little brackets like this, we can also include JavaScript code, which is what we're going to do right now. So what do we want? We are importing our DevTruths, right? So I'm going to legit copy and paste this here. And what we want to do is that we want to map through all the DevTruths. So I'm going to put the map. I'm going to include a set of brackets. Then I'm going to include another set of brackets because we want the truth, each individual truth, which is an object, and then the index. And then right outside of that internal set of brackets, I'm going to include an arrow, and then I'm going to include another set of brackets like so, and I'm going to make some room. So as you can see, we are working in between the curly braces. We have DevTruth map, we have the truth, the index, the arrow, and the set of brackets. Please pause and implement. Now here, we are going to include our card component that we created as if it were another HTML element. Now here, we need the key. Why? Because this is coming from a list, so we need the index of each one. So the key is going to be equal to curly braces and the index for each truth inside of the list. And then we're going to pass it the title, which is going to be the truth.title. Remember, each card, and I'm going to split this to the right, actually receives these properties, which we're passing now that we're iterating through the list. And we're going to do now the same with the reason. Equals, curly brace, and then truth.reason. Perfect. Please pause and make sure that you implement this. I'm going to save now to reformat. Please make sure that now that the code is reformatted, that everything looks good. Remember, we are working in between these curly braces and we're mapping through the DevTruth. Now that this is done, we are going to open our terminal and I'm going to stop the server just to show you how to run it again, npm run dev, and then meet me over at the browser at localhost 5173 or any port that you decided to use. We created exactly the same thing with React, and this is really cool, but what did we learn here? By rebuilding the same application in React, we have highlighted how frameworks are amazing at streamlining development. But as you also noticed, frameworks abstract core JavaScript concepts, and understanding vanilla JavaScript provides a solid foundation, making it easier to grasp and effectively use frameworks like React, which will allow you to learn the frameworks faster because remember, frameworks will always be updating and additional frameworks might come out of the woodwork. And maybe in a few years from now, there are newer frameworks that have made React obsolete. But most importantly, maybe there will be a new framework that you created. I'll see you in the next episode.